Hello, my name is Rob Evans, and I'm Vermont's School Security Liaison Officer for the Agency of Education and Department of Public Safety. And I'm also the chair of the Vermont School Crisis Planning Team.
And my name is Emily Harris from Vermont Emergency Management, and I'm the vice chair of the Vermont School Crisis Planning Team. We're here to talk to you today about what parents and guardians can do before and during an emergency to keep their students safe. Before an incident happens, the most critical thing you can do is maintain current up-to-date emergency contact information with your school. As changes occur throughout the year, you change a cell phone, you change your landline, you move, make sure you're keeping that information up to date because that is how your school is going to be communicating with you. Also, be aware of what your school's emergency communication procedures are. Are they going to be calling you? Are they going to be texting you? Are they going to be emailing you? Make sure you know what those methods are ahead of time. During an incident, make sure you're monitoring those devices to ensure that you're getting that up-to-date emergency information from your school. Also monitor the radio and television to see official communications from the school and public safety officials. These are your best sources of information. They're going to be providing you with timely, accurate information about what is actually occurring at the school. Make sure that when they send out instructions for reunification, that you follow those instructions and go exactly where they tell you to go, when they tell you to go there, with whatever identification or forms they require.
And Emily, isn't it fair to say that some schools may be using a variety of platforms to communicate with parents? It may be Twitter accounts, it may be Facebook pages, it may be websites.
Yes.
So parents need to make sure that they've got a variety of different platforms and are sure they're listening to if schools are directing folks to those platforms, those are the ones where they're to get their credible information.
Yes, it's critically important that they're following those Twitter feeds, those Facebook accounts. Some schools are updating their school websites, some aren't, so just make sure you know what those are ahead of time so that you can follow the accurate information. So what things do you want to make sure you're not doing during an incident? First, do not go to the school. You will be told where to go and when to go there. If you go to the school, a couple of things will happen. One, you'll be blocking access for emergency responders that may need to get there, hindering the response and slowing things down. And two, your student may no longer be located there. Your student may have been relocated to another site, and now you're at a place where you can't even get access to your student. So please wait until you receive communication from your school about where to go. Next, make sure you're not contacting your student. Sometimes in an emergency situation, it's vitally important that alerts and dings not be going off on phones because there may be a threat within the building. By calling your student, it could potentially put them and their classroom in harm's way.
So let's talk a little bit about the safety terms and procedures that you may be hearing through your school communication, or quite honestly, you may be hearing out in the press and in public media. There are a variety of crisis commands, we call them, that your students may hear. Lock down, lock out, evacuate, shelter, and reunify are just a few of those commands, and each one of those has a different type of response actions that students, faculty, or staff may be taking as a result of whatever emergency that they are responding to. So let's take a look at each one of those. A lockout, if your students and faculty and staff are hearing the command of lockout, that usually is given to a school when something is taking place in the community that may have a negative impact on our school. Let's say there's a bank robbery nearby, or there's a person of interest or suspicious person in the neighborhood that law enforcement has seen. They may call the school and ask the school to go in a lockout, which means securing the exterior portion of the building, but continuing with the normal business operations of the day. So that may mean that the exterior portion of the school is secured and locked, but that faculty, staff, and students are still going about their business and classes and exchanging classes and going to the cafeteria for lunch and those types of things. It's business as usual. Accountability is enhanced, and we just are aware of our situational awareness about what may be taking place in our community, and we want to make sure that that the schools are staying in touch with local law enforcement to ensure that if anything needs to change with the crisis commands, or they need to continue to enhance security, we're doing just that in the future. The next command that folks may hear an awful lot about is the lockdown command. That is when there is a threat that's specifically located inside the walls of our school, and there are specific life-saving actions that we will be asking folks to do. Some of those may be to lock classroom doors, to turn the lights out, to move away from lines of sight, to maintain silence, to wait for first responders to open the door, and accountability is of utmost importance in these types of situations as well. And just remember and keep in mind that the lockout command is something that's taking place in our community, but the lockdown command is something that's taking place at our school right now. So timing is of the essence. Folks have to take individual life-saving actions, and that's usually what we're hearing most in the press as schools have gone into lockdown because of the threat inside the school. Let's talk about how these may transition from one type of command to the other. As many folks may have heard back in April of 2017, all of the Essex Junction schools were placed on a lockdown after concerns of a potential armed individual heading to the school. And after that lockdown took place, over a period of time, the school transitioned into a lockout configuration where the threat wasn't so much of an exigent set of circumstances, but we still wanted to secure the exterior portion of our building. So we went from a lockdown to a lockout type of configuration based upon the updated information and the threat that the police department was made aware of. When we talk about evacuating, we usually talk about moving from inside the walls of our school to an alternate location outside of our school building. For a variety of reasons, that may be a fire or hazardous material spill inside of our school or smoke in the building where we just have to get out of our current location. But it's also important to understand that we may move from one portion of the building to the other portion of the building based upon, again, the threat or the hazard that our folks may be exposed to. And folks may hear the word shelter in place for a specific hazard, and that usually is as a result of a weather-related event, high winds, ice storm, those types of things, and maybe even a hazardous material spill that's on the outside of our school that may, based upon prevailing winds, may impact our school. We're just going to ask folks to stay inside, close the doors, close the windows, and shelter in place because inside the building is the safest place for us to be. And finally, you may hear a reunification, and usually a reunification is called for when something has taken place inside our school which has caused us to move to an alternate location outside the walls of our school, and now we need to reunify our faculty and staff and our students with loved ones. And as Emily had talked before, we need to make sure that we wait for that communication to come from our school executive leadership teams with specific information about where we're supposed to go, where we're supposed to park, how we're supposed to link up with our loved ones. And it's important to be patient, and it's also important to be prepared to come to show identification and the appropriate identification so that you can be linked up with your student.
And a lot of us know the people that serve at the front desk of our school on a day-to-day basis, but during a reunification event, we may have different people serving at that desk, which is why it's so important to have that identification. Also, you may be having one of the other individuals on your emergency sheet picking up the individual. So make sure that the school is aware of all of the people that you are authorizing to pick up your student during an emergency situation, and that if they're going to be picking them up, that they're bringing their identification with them. So to sum up, it's really important that we focus on the school emergency by first focusing on the facts rather than rumors to get your information from appropriate sources. During any incident, there will be rumors flying all around social media and even on the news. Make sure you're really paying attention to the information from public safety officials and the school. That is your best source of information. Be orderly when preparing to respond to the school or designated relocation site if and when directed. Do not panic as you are driving. Do not create a hazard for yourself by driving too fast or erratically. Make sure you've got your identification with you and any other paperwork that you may need. Control your emotions as much as possible to avoid adding to the emergency at hand. This will already be a high stress situation for you and for the students. Make sure that when you show up, you are not out of control emotionally, because your student needs you to be strong. Use caution when you respond, and park or stand in a location that's at the designated site to avoid interfering with the emergency. When you park, you will have someone directing you where the appropriate place to go is. Follow their directions. And you can support school officials and emergency responders by adhering to their directions at all times. They may ask you to go to a specific location to fill out forms or wait here for a period of time while they go to get your student. Make sure you are following those directions, and it'll help make it faster, easier, and safer for everyone.
And Emily, it's important for parents to know as well that there are certain drills and exercises that schools do on a regular basis, that
Yes.
they have monthly drills. Our school executive leadership teams are concerned for the safety and security of your students and loved ones. And so these types of things that you're hearing about today are taken seriously by our principals and superintendents and reinforced with the planning, training, and exercise that takes place every day to make sure that we are prepared for any type of
Yes.
emergency that our school may be exposed to.
And some schools are actually also holding reunification drills where they're involving parents. So if you're involved in a reunification drill, it'll also give you the opportunity to experience what that would be like in a real situation. So if you're asked to participate, please do, because it gives the school some information about some areas for improvement they may have, and it also gives you some information about what you may want to do differently in the future.
And it's also important for you at home to reinforce the need and to inform your students of the importance of these types of drills, to take them seriously, but also to ask your students about what's taking place during these drills so that you can be better informed and educated about what your responses might be during a critical incident. And finally, I would point you back to your individual schools and superintendents that if you have questions about the emergency preparedness process and more information is needed about what you should do during an emergency, we would ask that you contact your individual school crisis planning team or principal and superintendent. So parents, thanks so much for listening. Get involved, stay engaged, and we appreciate you sharing a little bit of time with us today.
Thank you.